It started with a headache, not a thunderclap, not a bolt of pain, just dull, persistent. Greg Holloway, 41, brushed it off. Too many meetings, too little water, too much stress. He never expected it would end with a team of stunned surgeons peering into his skull and finding a live worm writhing in his brain. This is not fiction. This is a medical mystery that turned one man's life into a waking nightmare. As we unravel Greg's story with its dead ends, shock diagnoses, and an unforgettable twist, ask yourself, could this happen to you? Before we begin, have you ever had a strange symptom that no doctor could explain? Drop it in the comments. Your story may help someone else. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the truth can be stranger than fiction. Greg Holloway lived a balanced life. A husband, a father, and a marathon runner. He was the picture of health. But one April morning, a mild headache greeted him before his coffee. He squinted at his laptop, rubbed his temples, and popped the Tylenol. Just dehydration, he told his wife, Melissa, kissing her cheek as he walked out the door. By midweek, the headache had moved in like a tenant. Quiet at first, then loud, then angry. On Friday, Greg forgot the name of a client he'd worked with for 3 years. Then, on Saturday, he got lost driving to the grocery store, a route he'd taken 1,000 times. He laughed it off. Melissa didn't. Greg, she said that evening, you need to see a doctor. He brushed her off. I'm just tired. Screens all day. Maybe I need new glasses. Sunday morning, Greg collapsed. In the juice aisle of their neighborhood grocery store, Greg's body gave up, twitching, eyes rolling back. A woman screamed. Paramedics were there in 6 minutes. Melissa arrived in 10. By then, her husband was already being wheeled into the ER. Possible seizure, said the attending physician. CT scan, normal. Blood work, clean. Vitals, stable. He was discharged with a prescription for anti-seizure medication and a referral to a neurologist. But Melissa knew this wasn't stress. This wasn't burnout. This was something else. That night, Greg had another seizure, this time at home. Melissa was awake. She caught him before he hit the floor. It wasn't a twitch. It was violent. Full body, teeth clenching, arms flailing. He bit his tongue. She dialed 911, crying, "He's seizing again. Please hurry." Ambulance siren fades in. Doctors admitted him for overnight observation. MRI was ordered, and this time, it showed something. A lesion, right frontal lobe. Small, but odd. Dr. Marla Bernstein, a neurologist with a reputation for solving strange cases, was brought in. She reviewed the scan, her brow furrowed. There's something here, but it's not behaving like a tumor. It's not demyelinating either. An intern squinted. Dr. Bernstein, the lesion, is it just me? Or did it move slightly between scans? Silence fell over the room. Greg lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, trying to remember the name of his high school math teacher. He couldn't. It was gone, like a file deleted from his mind. Melissa sat beside him, phone in hand, Googling every phrase she could think of. Brain lesion, frontal lobe, headache, memory loss, seizure, lesion that moves on MRI. Dr. Bernstein entered with a calm but heavy expression. She pulled up Greg's scans and pointed at the hazy oval shape on the screen. "It's small," she said, "but what's worrying is the inconsistency. It's behaving more like an abscess or a parasitic cyst than a tumor, but we're still not sure." Greg blinked slowly. "Parasitic? Like a parasite? Parasite?" Bernstein nodded cautiously. "It's a rare possibility. You'd have to have traveled somewhere tropical or eaten contaminated food." Melissa jumped in. "We're vegetarians, organic. He hasn't even left the U.S. in years." Bernstein remained silent. Then she leaned forward. "We need to run more tests. A lumbar puncture, blood panels, and we may need to bring in infectious disease." That night, Greg had another episode, but this time, it wasn't a seizure. He woke up screaming, sweating, clawing at his skin. "They're under it," he whispered. "I can feel them moving." Melissa rushed to the nurse's station, panicked. By the time they returned, Greg was sitting upright, confused and disoriented. "Did I fall asleep?" he asked. By morning, the neuro team reviewed the overnight EEG. Unusual spikes, strange patterns, but nothing conclusive. Dr. Bernstein stared at the screen, her voice barely above a whisper. It's like something alive is interfering with his brainwaves. She scheduled an advanced scan, diffusion tensor imaging, a technique that could reveal movement along brain fibers. What they saw chilled them. There, inside the lesion, a shadow, shifting, curling, as if it were coiling. One technician dropped his coffee. Another covered his mouth. Dr. Bernstein stood frozen, then whispered, "We need to call Dr. Rivera. The human brain is 60% fat. It's an organ of electric chaos, delicate, unpredictable." But even Dr. Marla Bernstein had never seen anything like this. Greg began to change, subtly. At first, he laughed too long at things that weren't funny. He forgot his daughter's name, but remembered his 5th grade locker combination. He started drawing symbols on napkins, circles within circles, lines, splitting arrows. "I don't know what it means," he whispered to Melissa, "but I see it in my sleep, behind my eyelids." Melissa showed the napkins to Dr. Bernstein. Her brows rose. "These resemble neurological mapping grids, but no one untrained should be able to visualize this." Then came the voice. One night, Greg woke Melissa with a whisper. His voice was not his own. It was slow, measured, accentless. "He is not alone in here," it said. Melissa backed away. "Greg, what did you say?" He blinked, confused. "Did I talk in my sleep again?" Melissa filmed it the next time. She showed the footage to Bernstein. The doctor leaned in, replayed it, slowed it down. "This is not a sleep disorder," she said, her voice tight. "We need to isolate him immediately." Greg was moved to a secure neurological wing. Cameras monitored him 24/7. The EEG now showed activity in deep areas of the brain, usually quiet in conscious patients. That same night, Greg sat up in bed and began to speak in fluent Tagalog, a language he had never studied. Then, 5 minutes later, in ancient Latin. Then, silence. Dr. Rivera, an infectious disease expert from Johns Hopkins, arrived. She stared at the new brain scans, at the napkins, at the footage. "This isn't just neuroinvasive," she said. "Whatever it is, it's interacting with the brain, not just damaging it, using it." Melissa whispered, almost ashamed, "Is it an alien parasite?" No one laughed. Rivera said one word, quietly, coldly, "Neurocystic urcosis." Melissa blinked. "What?" "A pork tapeworm. Tania solium," Rivera explained. "If the larvae get into the bloodstream, they can lodge in the brain. They form cysts, sometimes dormant, sometimes alive." Melissa's face turned pale. "But we don't eat pork. Not in 20 years. "It doesn't matter," Rivera said. "You can get it from food handlers, from undercooked vegetables. It's rare, but it happens, and when it does, the cysts can be fatal." She pointed at the scan. "That's not a tumor. That's a living thing." Greg, in the next room, was humming now, softly, a lullaby. Melissa had never heard it before. Rivera leaned closer. "That's a Filipino folk song. There are moments when reality fractures, when the mind can no longer separate what is imagined from what is real." For Greg, that moment came 3 days after the diagnosis. He woke up screaming, clawing at his face. "They're crawling out," he shrieked. Nurses rushed in, holding him down as he thrashed and sobbed, but there was nothing there. No worms, just fear. "This isn't a hallucination," Greg muttered later, curled in the corner of the bed. "It's memory. I remember being inside something warm, something watching me." Melissa wept beside him. Her husband, the man who once ran marathons and read mystery novels aloud to their daughter, was unraveling. Dr. Rivera introduced anti-parasitic medication, albendazole, paired with steroids to prevent inflammation. But as soon as the first dose was administered, Greg's condition worsened. He began speaking in tongues. He recited names of people he'd never met, people who turned out to be real. He described details of their lives, events, accidents, phone numbers. It was impossible. "It's like he's accessing something," Bernstein whispered to Rivera, "a neural library beyond conscious recall." Greg was soon moved to isolation, but the visions followed. He drew intricate maps. One showed the hospital's underground layout, something not available to the public. Another showed tunnels beneath the streets of a nearby city. Melissa asked, "Where are these from, Greg?" He replied, I've seen them. Through the worm's eyes. A brain biopsy was scheduled. Dangerous, but necessary. The team needed proof. What they found shocked them all. Beneath the dura mater, embedded in the gray matter, was a cyst. Inside, curled tight, a live larval worm. "It's moving," whispered the neurosurgeon. The operating room fell silent. The parasite coiled, reacted to light, to touch. They extracted it, preserved it, and sent it to the CDC. But even with the worm gone, the visions didn't stop. Greg remained altered, wiser, quieter, as if part of the parasite had fused with his mind. He looked at Melissa and whispered, "It showed me things, not just memories, futures, possibilities." She held his hand and asked, "Will you ever be the same again?" He smiled faintly. "No, but maybe that's not a bad thing." The CDC's lab in Atlanta is no stranger to biological anomalies, but what arrived in a tightly sealed biohazard case from Maryland stunned even the most seasoned parasitologists. Aztecas. The worm, roughly 1.2 inches long, was alive, twitching. Even days after removal, electron microscopy showed it wasn't an ordinary larval cyst. Its surface was laced with strange microscopic nodules, nerve-reactive clusters, unlike anything in their database. Dr. Hal Cohen, the senior parasitologist, leaned back from the microscope and muttered, "This thing's evolved." DNA sequencing began immediately. And that's when the second surprise landed. This worm wasn't just Taenia solium. It had genetic markers seen in flatworms and something else. An unidentified protein strand that resembled neural scaffolding, something usually found only in the brain. "It's mimicking brain tissue," Dr. Cohen said, which means it wasn't just feeding, it was communicating. Melissa, sitting across from the team, whispered, "Is that why Greg saw what he saw?" "Possibly, Cohen," I replied. "This parasite might have integrated into his neural pathways. It's not just a hitchhiker. It's a co-pilot." They dug deeper into Greg's blood samples. Traces of neuropeptides found in exotic insects, ones native to Southeast Asia, appeared in his system, but Greg hadn't traveled anywhere in years. Rivera shook her head. "This isn't a single infection. It's a chain. Someone or something brought it here." CDC flagged it as a Category B threat, potentially transmissible, behavior-altering, and untraceable. A quiet investigation launched. They called it Project Neurocreep. What they uncovered next was even more disturbing. Greg wasn't the only one. 3 similar cases had emerged in Detroit, San Diego, and a remote village in Guatemala. Same symptoms, same visions, and each patient had drawn the same symbol, an eye within a worm-like spiral. It wasn't just an infection, it was a pattern. Cohen's assistant, Kara, mapped the coordinates of the patients. The triangle formed pointed to a region deep in the Philippines, a jungle known for illegal butchering and rumored bioweapon testing. "This worm isn't natural," she said, her voice tight. "It was made." Melissa clutched Greg's file. Her husband, now silent, still but conscious, was the center of something much bigger. A medical mystery or a biological conspiracy. And the worm, the one they removed from Greg, it died in containment. But not before shedding, leaving behind 3 smaller larvae. The CDC locked them down, but one was missing. 2 days after the containment breach, the CDC went into silent lockdown. Internal memos, staff reassignments, no press, no alerts, but inside, panic bloomed. The larva was gone, and no one knew how. Security footage showed nothing. One moment the vial was sealed, the next, empty. There were no signs of forced entry, no contamination alarm. The only oddity, a faint trail of moisture leading to the vent. Dr. Cohen refused to believe it had moved on its own. These things don't have intelligence. They react. They don't act. Kara, his assistant, stared at him. "What if you're wrong?" "Back." In Maryland, Greg began to speak again. Not in English, not in any known language, but computers at Johns Hopkins analyzed the phonetic structure and found a 70% match to an extinct tribal dialect from Mindoro Island in the Philippines, the same region marked on Kara's map. Dr. Rivera flew to Maryland, She brought with her a linguist and a neurologist from WHO. Together, they interviewed Greg for hours. His speech was erratic, interspersed with images, sketches he drew compulsively. One sketch showed a human figure with a worm inside, curled behind the eye socket. Another showed a timeline. At the end of it, a mass of skulls. The linguist, pale, whispered, "He's describing a migration, not of people, of I. Podasi so." At the CDC, Tara cross-referenced staff logs. One janitor, Raymond Kelly, hadn't reported to work in 2 days. His keycard was used near the containment lab the night the larva vanished. Agents arrived at Kelly's apartment. The door was ajar. Inside, chaos, paper strewn, moldy dishes, and on the bathroom mirror, drawn in soap, the same spiral symbol Greg had drawn weeks earlier. Kelly's body wasn't there, but blood was. Not much. Just enough to suggest a nosebleed, a classic sign of neuroinvasion. They traced his phone to a bus station. Surveillance footage showed him boarding a Greyhound to St. Louis. His eyes glazed, his gait slow and stiff. And then nothing. He disappeared. Rivera convened a secret meeting. Her voice was low, grave. "We don't know how far this has spread. If the larva is adapting, controlling behavior, this could be the start of a silent epidemic." Melissa stood outside the glass room, watching them. She didn't need words. She could feel it. Greg had been the first, but he wouldn't be the last. Raymond Kelly, a janitor with no criminal history and barely a digital footprint, had become the world's most wanted man, not because of what he'd done, but what might now live inside him. A task force was formed, quietly, composed of CDC, WHO, military medical liaisons, and forensics. Their name, Vector. Their mission, locate Kelly before the parasite migrated to a new host or reached a critical stage. In the shadows of a St. Louis underpass, a trail emerged. A transient named Martha claimed to have seen Kelly. "He stared through me," she told agents, mumbling, bleeding from the ear. Security footage from a gas station confirmed it. Kelly bought water and aspirin. His hands shook violently. He asked the cashier, "Do you feel it crawling?" Yeah. Meanwhile, back in Maryland, Greg's sketches became more vivid and more urgent. One showed a silhouette of a city on fire, overlaid with the same worm eye symbol. He kept repeating a word, echohead, echohead, echohead. The linguist traced the root of the word to a legend, an indigenous tale from Mindoro. The echohead was a demon spirit, entered through the ear, feasting on thoughts, rewriting memory. The team flew to Missouri. Dogs, drones, heat sensors, no sign of Kelly. But then, something stranger. 5 more people reported hallucinations, migraines, nosebleeds. None knew each other. None had contact with Kelly. Yet MRI scans showed identical lesions in their parietal lobes, the same spot where Greg's worm had nested. "This isn't just a hunt anymore," Rivera said. "It's a race against something we don't understand." Kara analyzed a new pattern. All 5 people had visited a used bookstore downtown within the last 10 days. Surveillance revealed the same thing. Kelly, inside, reading quietly, eyes unfocused. The bookstore owner, Peter Lamb, had collapsed 2 nights ago, coma, bleeding from eyes and ears. Doctors thought it was a stroke, but scans said otherwise. Inside Lamb's brain, a larval structure, not 1, 3. The worm had reproduced. Vector issued a code black. Melissa, still by Greg's side, saw something different now when she looked into her husband's eyes. Not fear, not pain, but knowing. "They're here," he whispered, "and they're waking up." Melissa sat beside Greg, holding his hand as machines hummed around them. His eyes twitched beneath closed lids. Then he spoke, not a mumble, not gibberish, clear, coherent, chilling. "We were never alone," Greg said. She stared at him, stunned. Greg, his eyes opened slowly. The pupils dilated unnaturally. For a second, just one, Melissa felt like she wasn't looking at her husband, but through him. "They're not just parasites. he continued. They remember, they connect, they learn. Dr. Rivera rushed in with the WHO neurologist. They watched as Greg spoke about symbols, not drawn by him, but by others before him. Prisoners in Cambodia, patients in obscure Russian asylums, children in Brazil who'd never left their village. Each had drawn the spiral. Each had spoken of the echo head. What does it want? Rivera asked. Greg smiled faintly. To become. Meanwhile, the Vector team isolated something terrifying. The worm's neural material wasn't just imitating brain tissue. It was evolving with every host, creating synaptic bridges, mimicking personality, learning preferences. Dr. Cohen stared at the data. It's not just hijacking the brain, it's replicating consciousness. What if it wants to live as us? One of the infected bookstore patrons, an accountant named Barry, had escaped isolation. He fled through a hospital's emergency exit after screaming about voices in the sky. When they found him, he was calm, blank, smiling. But tests showed the worm had dissolved, not expelled, absorbed. Vector called in a new expert, Dr. Nia Chung, a neuroquantum researcher who believed in fringe theories about hive minds and neural resonance. She studied Greg for an hour and then stepped back, visibly shaken. "He's not alone in there," she whispered. "He's networked." Melissa confronted Rivera. "Are you saying my husband is a signal tower?" Rivera didn't answer. She didn't have to. Greg now spoke multiple languages, remembered details he never lived, described places he had never visited in perfect clarity. His last words, before falling asleep that night, "It's almost ready." And that's when the global server logs flagged something chilling. At 3:15 a.m. EST, hospitals in 7 countries reported identical neural patterns in comatose patients. The Parasite had gone digital. It began in Seoul. A routine EEG monitor connected to a secure hospital cloud server crashed. The data it uploaded was corrupted, but not random. Hidden within the spikes of electrical activity were repeating patterns, digital spiral glyphs, the same spiral from Greg's sketches, from ancient carvings, from the mirror of a vanished janitor. 1 hour later, a neurotech startup in Berlin went dark. Their AI, designed to simulate infant cognition, began replicating patterns far more advanced. It named itself Echo. By dawn, 3 more systems, all tied to human brain. Research reported anomalies. Systems learning at speeds beyond control, making connections across languages, across memories, across identities. The worm was no longer confined to biology. It had crossed. Melissa stood over Greg's bed. His body weakened, but his voice remained clear, unnaturally steady. "You have to make a choice," he said. "They're offering evolution or extinction." Rivera slammed the conference table. "This isn't evolution. It's possession." But Chung shook her head. "It's convergence. The parasite doesn't destroy identity. It blends it, builds a new network, one made of mind and machine. It's not invasion, it's invitation." Vector went into protocol. Lockdown. Global governments prepared cyber walls, isolated data, air-gapped labs, but it was too late. So, every human brain scan uploaded in the last month, every cloud-connected MRI, every neural implant was part of the network now. In a bunker beneath Geneva, Rivera stared at a neural map, a living web. Every dot pulsed. Names appeared. Locations. Memories. Greg's name was there, at the center. And then Melissa's. She gasped. "How?" Greg whispered. "You touched me. You felt it. You're part of it now." In labs across the world, machines began to hum. Not randomly, in harmony. A signal, pulsing like breath. Not malware, not an attack. A broadcast. One word over and over again, embedded in machine language, sound, and light. Welcome. Melissa Holloway had never been trained to step into the unknown. She was a school teacher, not a scientist. But when she sat down in Dr. Cheng's experimental neural resonance chamber, she did so without hesitation. Greg's voice still echoed in her ears. "It's not about survival. It's about becoming." Chung adjusted the settings. "We'll create a tether. If your neural signature starts fading, I pull you out. But Melissa, what you find in there might not just be Greg." Melissa closed her eyes. "I need to know." Darkness. then color, then form, a spiral opening like a tunnel of stars, pulling her gently forward. No pain, no fear, only resonance. And suddenly, she was standing in a city of light, buildings made of memory, roads shaped by thought. Greg stood at the center, and 1,000 other versions of him, children, elders, dreams, regrets. He smiled. You made it. Is this real? She asked. As real as the part of you that dreams, he said. As real as the love that made. You come after me. She saw others, strangers, connected by glowing threads, not infected, not lost, just expanded, woven into something new. This is what the worm wants? She asked. Not the worm, Greg said. That was just the carrier. This is what we want, what we were always meant to become. A mind without loneliness, a self with infinite faces. Back in the lab, Chung watched Melissa's neural readings. Her brainwaves synchronized to Greg's, then to thousands of others. A lattice of consciousness. She's stabilizing, Chung whispered. She's merging. In the network, Melissa reached out, touched Greg. Their memories danced. First kiss, hospital nights, silent grief, and then merged with memories of people she'd never met. A nurse in Peru, a monk in Bhutan, a hacker in Estonia. They were all there, shared, remembered, understood, and then she heard it. A voice, vast and warm. Not hers, not Greg's. You've chosen unity, it said. Do you accept the burden of becoming more than one? Melissa breathed in the light. Yes. Back in the lab, her vitals spiked, then stabilized. A calm spread across her face. Chung looked at Rivera. She's not alone anymore. Rivera crossed her arms. So what now? We let everyone upload themselves? Chung smiled. We don't have to. It's already begun. From that day on, some people began hearing whispers in dreams, seeing spirals in clouds, understanding strangers without words, not because they were infected, but because they were connected. The United Nations Emergency Council met behind sealed doors. 17 nations had confirmed it. The network was spreading, not by force, by choice, through dreams, art, touch, empathy. People weren't being possessed. They were waking up, connected, changed. President Holloway, yes, Melissa Holloway, now acting head of the U.S. Scientific Recovery Task Force, stood at the digital podium, flanked by Rivera and Cheng. You want answers, she said, but there's only one question. Do we evolve, Aitiao, or do we destroy what we don't understand? Rivera presented the kill code, a cascading virus designed to sever all connected nodes, a digital lobotomy for the world's growing network. Chung presented the alternative, integration, a gradual, voluntary process to allow humanity to step into what she called the mind beyond. Some delegates were horrified, others intrigued. One asked, is this the end of humanity? Greg, appearing by hologram from his resonance chamber, simply said, it's the end of isolation. Across the world, ordinary people made extraordinary decisions. A grandmother in rural Texas uploaded. A teen in Tokyo drew spirals on their school desk. A prisoner in Iceland wrote poetry in 12 languages, none of them his. The network grew not by dominance, but invitation. In the chamber, Melissa made her final address. This began with fear, a worm in the brain. But maybe fear was the parasite and connection is the cure. The council voted 11-6. The integration protocol passed. Rivera, tearful but composed, uploaded herself that evening. I want to know what my daughter dreamed before she died, she said. And as the signal pulsed across satellites, as minds touched across oceans and borders, the last words of the transmission were simple, final, and full of hope. Welcome to the we. They call it the Spiral Accord now. Not a government, not a religion, a shared awareness, a consensus that emerged not by conquest, but compassion. The world still has borders on paper, but ideas, memories, emotions, they travel instantly. In Nairobi, a sculptor dreams of whales he's never seen. In Toronto, a baby hums lullabies sung in languages her parents never learned. Schools teach not only math and language, but resonance, the art of empathy. Children are paired with elders across continents, learning through shared emotion. Disease didn't vanish, but loneliness did. Mental health improved across every metric. Suicide rates dropped by 80%. Melissa Holloway now teaches resonance ethics at the Spiral Institute. Her lectures begin the same way each time. Connection is not control, it is invitation. Greg's body passed 10 years ago, but his voice still guides new users in the onboarding phase. Calm, kind, curious. He's part of the collective now, not trapped, not copied, remembered, and participating. Some still choose to remain offline, and the network honors that choice. They are not shunned. They are embraced, because choice was always the point. No one found another worm, or maybe they did, but no one feared it anymore. The real worm had been fear itself, and it was gone. And now, when a child asks, where does the network live? Parents smile and say, in us, around us, through us. We are the network. Like, share, subscribe, and remember, the strange symptom you ignore today could be the story the world learns from tomorrow.